Ask Mike, brought to you by the Stadium Shop on Razorback in Fayetteville.
Well, hey, everyone. Welcome into Ask Mike. Good to be back. It's been a while. Had baseball, I think, going on the past couple
We
weeks.
had to cancel a couple of Ask Mikes because we had a game on the day we recorded, which wouldn't work. So we waited till it was over.
Yeah, so here we are. It was a fun time in Omaha. Wish it would have lasted longer. But let's talk and start with some baseball. Our first question is from H. McCamish, who wants to know, where would you place the 2022 Baseball Hogs all-time at the school? They didn't compare to the 2021 Razorbacks in wins and losses. They didn't even win their division and went 2-0 in the SEC tournament. But to me, they were the better team. Am I nuts?
You know, it all depends on individual fans and what is important to you. But don't you think there's a better feeling today than there was last year at this point when, you know, all of a sudden you go through this great season and then it's like thud and you don't go to Omaha, sort of like what Tennessee's going through right now. So I think you in my mind, you evaluate these teams based on what you do in the postseason and how you do in Omaha. And based on that, this is at least the third best team of all time at Arkansas, and I say that because they ended up with a 3-2 record in Omaha. There was one other team that was 3-2. That was the Norm DeBryan '79 team. They were 3-2. The difference is that team did get to play for the championship because it was structured different. So maybe you'd rate that team 2 and this one 3, and then the 2018 was 4-2. So when I look at all that, third best all time is amazing considering where this team was as we headed into the postseason. It was like everybody was mad, and I had even talked on this show, DVH's got to solve some big problems in the offseason because this isn't what Hog fans are used to. And then what you end up with is this incredible turnaround. Here's something that's amazing to me. The national champions, Ole Miss, they did the same thing. They went 2-0 in the SEC tournament, but from that point on, only one team beat them a game. Arkansas was the only team to beat them during that postseason run. And honestly, if they'd done the brackets a little differently and it was Ole Miss, Arkansas, you'd have probably seen Arkansas in the championship with a chance to do it. So you go 1-2 against them, but what did OU do? They went 0-2 against them, so that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think so. And DVH, and we've said it before, like, it's baseball, and it's so hard to explain that to people who don't understand the game. But DVH said, I'm not going to cry or be upset when you end your season in Omaha. That's exactly what you want to do.
And look, the championship game, they had 3 or 4 really hard hit balls that if they go a little bit this way or a little bit that way, then all of a sudden you may see them scoring runs. On the other hand, those RBIs were just out of reach. Baseball is sometimes a game of inches.
Absolutely, and it was fun covering this team for sure, especially down towards the end of the season. Slobber Slob says, proud of our baseball team and how they competed through the tournament. Everyone wanted the championship, but sometimes the best team doesn't win. 2011, the Cardinals won the World Series with an 81-81 regular season record. You can't win without getting to Omaha, and we are there regularly.
You know, Eddie Sutton used to say that if you're a team like Arkansas, and this would be basketball, because you're not Duke or North Carolina or Indiana, all of whom were winning championships back then. If you're a team like Arkansas, what you have to do is keep going every year. And as long as you get in, one of these years everything will fall just right for you and you'll win the national championship. That was an interesting theory. It never worked out for him because he had a great career but never won a national championship. But I do think there is something to that. And I think that's what DVH keeps thinking to himself. I mean, we can't keep having these issues getting so close and then certain things go wrong. One of these years, certain things are going to go right. And so if they keep going back, I think it could happen.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I hope so, sooner rather than later for Dave. He deserves one. All right, Mousetown says, why did it take DVH so long to figure out that if Connor Nolan started bringing the ball over the plate, his defense would take care of him? He's been a strikeout guy for so long, yet he had 1 strikeout against Stanford, but went almost 8 innings with just over 60 pitches.
Well, first of all, I don't think anybody, including DVH, was telling Connor Nolan, hey, you know,
don't throw it over the plate
and just strike everybody out. I don't think they were saying that. I think what was going on there was that once he got into the postseason, and it was never more evident in that Stanford game, he just had better control. Before, the ball was up. He's trying to nibble on the edges. Maybe you're not getting a call, so you bring it in a little more, but if it's up, that's when you're giving up home runs, and he gave up some. if you're bringing the ball down low like he was in that Stanford game, and it wasn't the only one where he did that, you're going to get more ground balls. Some of that is just also a little bit of luck because he had a lot of fly balls that were hit out there that just were right to people. So that helped him a little bit. But I just think he stepped up in ways that we could sit here and talk for a week about the differences in the way that guy just sucked it up and became somebody totally different. That had to be, that's such a mind game to go through what he went through. From the first half of the season, he was just rolling, and then all of a sudden, zoop, and then it goes away, and then you just turn the page.
Yeah, you know, I think that people talk, you know, you get worn out towards the end of the season, and I think there was some fatigue there. We talked about before during that Stillwater regional, that rest was huge for this team, for everybody on that team. But I also know, you know, I don't know how much this has to do with anything, but talking to Connor and Nolan's grandma, she said, you know, I told Connor, like, the team needs you. And I know that you're not a captain, you don't have that C on your jersey, but you are a leader on this team.
Right.
And I think that he realized, regardless of what he chooses to do with his future, this is his time, and he needs to be the Connor Nolan we know he can be, and we obviously saw that.
Yeah,
throughout the postseason.
he just made an amazing transition in postseason.
Yeah, absolutely. Pig Daddy Kane says baseball season had a great run. Enjoyed watching them turn it around. Who all is coming back? Who do we have coming in?
Well, what we know is if everything goes the way it normally does, you got one position guy coming back, and that's Peyton Stovall. He was a great first baseman, .995 fielding percentage, batted right at .300, missed 8 or 9 games, still hit 5 or 6 home runs. I think his strikeout ratio at the plate was lower than anybody on the team. So he's just a really good player for the freshman, and he comes back, you're going to have a great player. Now, what do you do beyond that? There is a rumor, I don't even call this a rumor, I was told this by somebody that knows this particular player, and I know he knows the player, that there's a player you might not think would come back that might possibly come back. I'm not going to mention his name because I don't want people to get their hopes up, but there's at least a possibility of one of these other position players coming back. Now let's talk about the mound, because you do have some guys coming back, and let's start with Connor Nolan, because we're not saying he's coming back, but he has a COVID year available.
He does, yeah.
So
he could take it if he wants.
And he hasn't said, I'm not coming back. He hasn't posted. He posted a thing yesterday which some people took as meaning he's gone, but he didn't say he was. So until he says that, I think there's always a possibility. But beyond that, I mean, you had some guys that really stepped up again in the postseason. Will McIntyre really just came out of nowhere. Suddenly he's a starter. Hagen Smith did both. I mean, he was a closer. He pitched some good innings in that one win over Ole Miss and was really good. So you got both of those guys coming back. You don't know what happened to Brady Tygart, why he slumped in the second half of the season, but the guy's got good stuff. I assume with the offseason, summer ball, fall ball, they'll get him back on track. And there's some other arms, some of whom may go and some may not. But I don't think they're going to have to do as much filling in on the mound as they are at the various positions. But if you look at recruiting, you
got Peyton Paulette coming back too.
Well, yes. I've been reading some chatter that
he is draft eligible.
And if he goes in the first or second round, he might be gone. So that's why I didn't mention him. You've got the possibility of some really good players coming in. They had the number 5 recruiting class in the country, and there's 3 or 4 of these guys that could really help next year. The problem is they're up there so high, do they turn down Major League Draft money like Peyton Stovall did? And they may or they may not. I will say this, in years past that was probably a no. But for whatever reason, ever since COVID, players have been more likely to go ahead and go to college.
And NIL.
I think NIL helps that. I think they're also starting to realize that you probably get better developed in your first 2 or 3 years out of high school through a college program than the minor league system, and the way you're treated is not even close.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys, can you imagine a minor league system with the kind of facilities?
I'm just saying the Razorback facilities is a lot better than the Naturals facilities. I don't think anyone's going to argue that.
And most of these guys don't even start out there. They're going to go to the instructional league, and then they're going to low A ball, you know, all this. So there's no comparison. So maybe 3 or 4 of these guys do go ahead and pass up good money and come here. You got to keep your fingers crossed. And then there is the portal, which that's always the X factor these days. We saw what DVH did with the portal last year. I mean, you look at what Michael Turner and Chris Lanzilli did. So you get 2 or 3 guys like that, you suddenly change everything. But again, let's be realistic. If you went back a year ago, you think about all the guys they had coming back. You know, Caden Wallace and Slavens and Robert Moore and all these guys. You don't have that at this point. So there are going to be more question marks. That's all I'm going to say. But with DVH, you know, you just got to think he's going to do it. He's going to figure out a way to get this team ready to try to make another run at Omaha. Yeah,
always does. All right, Blood Red Hog wants to know, how are the opening round matchups determined in the College World Series? You would think with 4 SEC teams, would they not have Ole Miss versus Auburn?
Well, you ended up with, I think, 3 on one side and 1 on the other. I guess A&M was on the other side. So they could have split it 2 and 2. But here's the problem. They do those seedings based on your seeding originally into the NCAA playoffs, the tournament. The first day they announced that big giant bracket, you keep that seeding. Yeah,
it's like if they were to just all of a sudden restructure like March Madness when you get to the Elite Eight.
They didn't restructure because of Ole Miss. They didn't go, wow, Ole Miss is really amazing. They're now a 2 seed. You know, they don't do that. You keep your seeding. And they did it the way they did based on seeding. So I don't really have a problem with the way they did that bracket. It's just when you have 4 SEC teams in, half the guys, it's going to be tough to get a situation where SEC teams don't play each other in the same bracket.
I mean, look, you got SEC teams playing each other in super regionals. It just is what it is.
It can happen.
Hog Dogger says, I recently have read that Treylen Burks is having breathing issues at practice with the Titans. It mentions he has asthma. I don't think this is a new condition. He likely had it playing as a Razorback. Do you think this is going to affect his status playing for the Titans?
You know, I don't know a lot about this. I'm just going to, my son had asthma years ago, and what I know is that it's triggered by allergens, so it's what you're allergic to. And for whatever reason, maybe here in Fayetteville he didn't encounter some of the stuff he's encountering, you know, in Nashville. And it might have been the time of the year, you know. Maybe this fall or even later this summer when they start getting ready for the season, he doesn't have the same issues. And one thing for sure, he's such a high-profile guy. We're going to keep an eye on that and see. I don't think that they're too concerned about it based on what they say right now. I don't think it's hurting him right now, but it is something to be concerned about. I think the fans right now are more mad about it than the team is.
Someone asked me my opinion about this, and I told him, I said, look, I said, you know, they can say what they want to in training camp. You know, this might be a thing. But I've watched Treylen Burks for 3 years as a Razorback, and I saw what he did on the field. And so until he proves me wrong on the field, I'm going to believe in Treylen Burks. I mean, we've watched him play enough to where he gets the benefit of the doubt.
I don't think it's a thing where he's got money and he's just going, okay, this is enough money, I'll just...
That's not his personality at all.
I'll just take my money after 2 years and go back and fish and chase alligators or whatever he does.
Yeah, not at all. The Snout team says with Anthony Black playing in the under 18 FIBA games, he has missed the first couple of weeks of Arkansas's practice. How much do you think that impacts his chemistry and development with the team? Does the publicity from him playing for the gold outweigh what he missed?
Absolutely, absolutely. The publicity was important. It wasn't just the publicity, it was the experience he got. They were very happy to have him down there, and he played really well. What Musselman said was that he was amazed that when he came back after missing that time, it was like he didn't miss it. He really, this kid's really smart. He apparently studied the system. I don't know if they sent him homework or stuff while he was gone, but he arrived here not behind. He didn't have to spend 4 days trying to catch up. So that speaks a lot to him, which is really important in Musselman's system. It's just as mental as it is physical, and it was amazing that he did all that and then came back and apparently picked up like he'd never been gone.
Yeah. I'm excited to see this whole team. You know, we missed some practices. Obviously, they're working out right now. But I'm excited to see what this team has in store.
And look, the great thing is that, yes, you have this almost completely new team. And we've seen where that causes problems each of these years under Muss because he has to figure out who goes when and where. But he always figures out a way to adjust. What's going to help this year is they get to have that extra practice time coming up next month, and then they get to go to Europe and play games. I don't think we're going to get to see those games. Nobody seems to know, but I don't remember anything in the past like that. Where
we got some video when they went to Spain
somehow,
and I know that they're going to send some.
I don't think fans are going to be able to watch that, but we'll find out about it and we'll know what they did, and it'll create excitement because look, the excitement over this basketball team is like off the charts. People are just jumping around going nuts over these guys because it's like you're looking at that roster and you're saying, which one of these 13 guys is not going to play much? Because I don't want to have to make that decision. They all look like studs. So I don't think there's ever been a roster at Arkansas in basketball, top to bottom, as good as this one.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I'm excited. All right, Swine American says, what was Tony Vitello's role when he worked for Van Horn? Did Dave Van Horn keep him on a short leash so he could not be as full of a swagger as he has shown at Tennessee, or has it always been there but no one around here really cared?
He wasn't the head coach. He didn't make decisions that he has to make at Tennessee.
Yeah.
I think he was always kind of had a little bit of swagger to him, but it wasn't anything that we noticed so much. And here's the thing I would say is, did you notice it his first 2 or 3 years when he was at Tennessee? I've only noticed it since they've gotten really good.
Yeah.
Here's my theory. Yes, he's sort of like that. But Tennessee's fans are like that. The players are like that. And I think they all fit in together. It's like our fans want that. I'm sort of that way. I recruited players that are sort of that way, so we're going to do this.
Well, and also think about baseball right now. You're growing the game. You're going to want people to watch you, and maybe for Vitello, it's let's have a little swagger and a little fun.
I personally think it's over the top.
It is a little, but
I think here's what I think is going to happen. If he comes back next year and doesn't dial it down a little bit, I think that he's got problems with the league office because they don't like the level to. Let's just talk about what's unacceptable. In that region, I think it was a regional, I think it was a super, but whatever it was, when they were down to, and can't remember who they were down to now, but when the kid came to the plate, hit a 2-run double that tied the game, and it went over the head of the other team's outfielder, and that guy was running back to the wall. He comes around second from first to second, and he's flipping off the guy. Yeah. And that is unacceptable. Yeah. That's even worse than the twinkle toes thing at Oklahoma State because that was just comical. This is really, making a gesture. So to me, the umpires should have stepped in and done something right then and there, and they didn't. I don't know why, but I think then what happened was we saw a reaction the next game where their pitching coach got suspended and another guy got suspended for striking out and arguing with the umpire. They're losing patience with that, so I expect next year to see that toned down a little bit. Yeah.
But he's like the Lane Kiffin of football.
You've said, though, you think that if he got offered the job, you think Arkansas would take him and would be happy to have him if Van Horn retires at some point.
I truly think that if you're looking around, Vitello is a wonderful person to step in when Dave Van Horn decides to retire. He knows the program. He knows the area. He's a stellar recruiter, and he can come in here and he can win baseball games. I think Tony Vitello is a great coach.
And people that know him say he would come back here in a heartbeat. He has said
some people might not know, but he was one of the groomsmen in Matt Hobbs' wedding. They're good friends also. Yeah. I mean, Tony Vitello is a good dude. I get that sometimes people don't like the swagger and it's a little much. But you can't deny that he's good at coaching baseball. He wins games, and he can recruit.
And he has said privately to people, Arkansas has the best facilities and the best fans, the best overall situation that a coach could ever have in college baseball.
He knows what's up. All right, Dr. Strangeborg says, because of the Title IX, many young men lose the chance to compete with institutions discontinuing their sport. Women deserve every opportunity to participate in college athletics, even if the majority of their sports are non-revenue earning, but it doesn't sound equitable and inclusive to me.
Look, here's where this whole thing, you got to go all the way back to the Supreme Court ruling, and that's a long time ago. And here's where you don't have an argument about that. If men's athletics had always been at schools revenue sports only, in other words, we only offer scholarships where we can pay for it. We're not going to offer you a scholarship if our sport can't pay for it. If they had always taken that approach, then maybe this would have never come up. But the fact of the matter is, going all the way back to when the Supreme Court ruled,
it's 50 years ago.
You had schools like Arkansas and all over the country. You had them generating most of their revenue through football, a little bit of it through basketball. But look what you had. You had men's track. That's a net loss. What revenue did you generate from track? Every once in a while you have an event and there might get some crowd, but it's not. So at most schools you get virtually nothing. Tennis, you can make money off tennis? No. Men's swimming, you make money off that? No. So you had all these men's sports that were only existing financially because of football and basketball. And they were allowing men to do that, so how do you argue you can't pay for it with women? And that's where they lost the argument. And you're never going to go back to that. They are lucky, really lucky, that somebody didn't successfully sue because the original ruling was equal scholarships. Well, can you imagine if they included football in that? How many more? That's 85 scholarships. There's no women's sport that requires 85 scholarships. But if they held their feet to the fire on that, you'd end up with 50 or 60 more women's scholarships. And now what do? You're really reducing the number of men's programs that you can have to do that. And I will tell you this, Frank Broyles did that to a certain degree. He eliminated men's swimming just so he didn't have to add extra women's scholarships because he didn't feel like he could pay for it. So that's always an issue. If you don't feel like you can pay for all these women, then you're going to have to eliminate some men's sports to make it balance out equally. We're not going back. We're not going back to that, I promise you.
Yeah. And if you want to play hockey, go to a school that has hockey.
Yeah.
You're not coming to Arkansas to play hockey.
But they're going to be equal. It's really almost unequal scholarships in the so-called Olympic sports because they're trying to make up the difference because women don't have a sport like football where you give 85 scholarships.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Pig's Feet says Jaylen Williams to OKC. So happy for him. Do you have any information on where the other draft-eligible players from Arkansas ended up?
Yeah, I think it was Stanley and Mude signed one of these. There's a name for it. I got it here somewhere. Look down there on what I wrote.
An Exhibit 10 contract?
Yeah, Exhibit 10 contract. That means that you get to go play in these 10 games in the summer, and you get minimum money. There's absolutely no guarantee they can cut you at any time. It's just kind of a foot in the door kind of thing. So Mude has reached that point. If they like him, then he signs a mutual contract, I think it's called, or a double contract or whatever. And then you get into what Mason Jones had. That's how he got into the NBA, and he's played in G Leagues. That gets you into the G League, and he's been on like 4 teams or whatever. Every year he gets cut, and he gets picked up by somebody else. But that's your foot in the door. I think Audice Toney and Chris Likes, nothing on them. J.D. Note, there's a chance he could get one of these summer league things. And if he does, then that gets your foot in the door. But I think, again, Audice Toney and Chris Likes are probably looking at playing basketball in Europe or any one of a number of other countries that have basketball.
Look, man, you make a lot of money overseas playing basketball, so nothing to knock out for sure.
Yeah.
All right, we have a question from a Stadium Shop customer. Brad Welsh wants to know, when did it become acceptable for our track and field men's team to continually win SEC titles yet lose nationals to SEC teams?
Most college track coaches have a decision to make, and they've done this forever. What do? Do we recruit a lot of good athletes that can give us depth so we can win a conference tournament? Or do we spend all of our money on 3 or 4 quality guys, like a guy that could win the nationals in the 100 meters or any other specific event? So a lot of schools choose to load up on pretty good athletes that don't necessarily translate to scoring points at nationals, and you'll win a conference championship. John McDonnell, unfortunately for Chris Bucknam, because he follows McDonnell developed a program where he did both. That was one of the amazing things about him, was he had both depth to win conference meets, but then he could have enough guys to go do the same thing at nationals. Most schools cannot do that. So that's why a lot of times you'll see teams win a national title and then even win their conference, because there's a totally different formula for doing that.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing about Bucknam. I don't think that's necessarily his philosophy. I think that's just what he ended up with. You know, sometimes you go and recruit these guys and, you don't know exactly what's going to happen. But I think if you sat down with him, he wouldn't say, yeah, I just want to win conference, so I'm not going to try to win nationals. And he's won a national championship. won since he's been here. So I don't think that's his philosophy. I think that's just the way it worked out. And I do think he is a good track coach who's a victim of being the guy that replaced John McDonald. Now, Bucknam will retire at some point. If Yurachek is still here, does Hunter go out then and, you know, Florida's got a really good track program right now. Does he go after somebody like that and say, hey, come here, we've won all these national championships, we have better facilities, we have a fan base that's, you know, really all into track. Would that attract somebody like that to come here? I don't know. But I don't see Hunter Yurachek looking at Chris Bucknam and going, gee, you just won the Triple Crown in conference, but I think I'm going to get rid of you. I just don't think that's going to happen.
Not at all. And you do have to understand that, you know, what John McDonald did with Arkansas being so dominant, other track programs like Florida and A&M and all of these programs that are winning titles are starting to catch up to our, like they are trying to be what Arkansas was, and they're
almost
doing
every sport that anybody's good at. There's just so much competition nowadays.
And the way that they've structured national meets now, for example, this is the women, but it's the same for the men. Britton Wilson had the #1 time and #2 time in the world or something in her 400 meters and 400 meter hurdles. Well, those races are so, and she was in the 4x400. Those races are so close together, she had to choose which one she wanted to race. So even though she's got some of the best times in the world in these two events, she can only run one. So that hurts your points because you could have gotten double points when you only got 1 point at nationals. And so there's a lot of strategy when they decide what their athletes are going to compete in that you don't necessarily see unless you actually look.
And
you're
again,
like, oh,
that's why I said I don't think that's Bucknam's philosophy, just to win conference, and I don't care about nationals. I think that's just the way it worked out.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Johnny5 says he hasn't been at Arkansas long, but where does Hunter Yurachek rate on Arkansas's all-time AD list? He hired Musselman. Can he keep him? Hired and just locked Pittman into a lifetime contract, and Arkansas sports are at an all-time high, in my opinion. His ability to hire the right coach has been amazing.
Right now, where we sit today, I'd rank him #1, which is kind of shocking because that puts him ahead of Frank. But he has shown, at least so far, a better ability to hire coaches than Frank because he hasn't had to fire any of these guys yet. I mean, you know, Frank hired Eddie, but then he didn't fire Eddie, but there were some complications, and he pretty much made a situation where Eddie decided to leave, and I think he would have eventually been fired because of his alcoholism. They fired Nolan. So Frank hired really good coaches. A lot of times he ended up having to fire them too. Yurachek hasn't had to do that yet. If he's here long enough, maybe he'll face that. But if you just, I've always said the #1 job an AD has is to hire coaches, and I rate him #1 right now in that. The only way that he might compare, not quite compare with Frank, and this is a philosophy thing. Frank had the philosophy, you run the athletic department like a business, therefore the customers are more important than your employees. Frank put the fans above his own coaches and his own players because his attitude was, hey, we're trying to create a product that these people will pay for. You better get your act together because they're not wrong. You are if you don't get the job done. I think Yurachek is a little more supportive of his coaches. I don't think he takes that philosophy. But on the other hand, look what happened with that baseball ticket policy thing. You can look at this a lot of different ways. You can say he made a mistake. Other people will say, no, he didn't. I've had people tell me the problem with the baseball tickets was that they didn't raise them as time went by. You had a baseball program that got better and better and better and better, and they kind of kept things the same, and everybody got used to it. And then all of a sudden, somebody looked at it and said, this product's undervalued. We need money because of COVID and a lot of other stuff. And if we're going to continue to compete at a high level, we got to raise money any way we can. And so they came up with that philosophy. And Yurachek gets a black eye as a result of it. Now, how mad are some of these people? I think they're mad, but here's the deal. How mad are they? How mad are they? Are you so mad that you're going to tell me that if this athletic program continues to win championships, and what happens the first time basketball wins a national championship, or if baseball wins one, or if football wins one? You think a bunch of mad baseball fans are going to convince people that Yurachek? Here's what's going to happen. If Musselman wins a national championship, if Van Horn, or if football even comes close to it, let's say football wins an SEC West title, you know what's going to happen? Some other school out there is going to come after Hunter Yurachek. because they're going to go, wow, look what he did there. Then you're going to have to figure out a way to keep him. So what looks like an issue with him may end up being a problem with other people in the way they look at him. So right now, I would rate him a little bit ahead of Frank.
And he brought back Coke.
He did that. Was that not a popular move? Whatever people that got mad about the tickets, what about the people that are happy like me about Coke?
Oh, you are thrilled about Coke.
Because I'm gonna go in that media room now, and there's not going to be somebody going, here's Diet Pepsi. I'm going to give me
This is how this works. We're in Stillwater, and Mike wants a drink. And I call, or we're ordering a pizza. Mike wants a Coke. Okay, a Coke. Is Pepsi okay? I already even know to not even ask him and say, do you have Dr. Pepper? Diet Dr. Pepper? Great. Be there in 15 minutes.
Can't handle Pepsi.
You don't like it.
Don't have to worry about that ever again.
No.
Or at least not.
At least not at sporting events. All right, that's going to do it for Ask Mike. Remember, you got any questions for this man over here, you can submit them over on Hogville or at the Stadium Shop, or just email him, text him, call him, do whatever. All right, thanks. We'll see you next week.